Well, thank you, everybody here for getting on the Zoom call. I know we only gave a couple days notice here for this, but I know each of you have been tuned into this issue. We had several three roundtable discussions last year on the legislation. Ultimately, Senate Bill 1274 was introduced towards the end of last session with Senator Carney and Senator Killian. And there's been some work done on the legislation here, as Senator Baker and Senator Carney are now working on it together. And we're going to forego general introductions at this point. I think I emailed everybody who's planning to be on the call, and we'll go off that list. And after Senator Baker and Carney make their opening remarks, and then we'll go from there. So with that, Senator Baker, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Nate. And it goes without saying that I'd like to take an opportunity to thank Senator Carney. I've looked forward to working with him on this issue. And I think both of us would say to all of you, our frontline workers, fire, EMS, and our public safety professionals, thank you for what you've done. This has been a challenging year, and it would be a lost opportunity if we really didn't kick off a meeting to talk about what you do to serve our communities and to keep our state and our neighbors, our residents, and those who visit us safe. So first of all, thank you. Really appreciate all the work that you do, and just really value and respect all of you for what you do. Nate, thank you. As the executive director of the committee, you really have been instrumental since we began this effort with SR 6. And excuse me, I didn't mute my phone. You began this quest some time ago, and clearly this recommendation that we're here to discuss was part of that initiative that you started with Senator Randy Volakovich some time ago. And so your dedication and commitment, you are now working for your third member as executive director of the committee. So thanks for your work. And to Senator Carney's staff and mine, Chris Ramsey, thank you as well. I think what many of us have been hearing, and I don't have to repeat it to all of you, the challenges we face, whether it's rural communities. I represent 116 municipalities in 5 counties across northeastern Pennsylvania. And whether it's a small community or a large community, we've been facing challenges with recruitment, retention, and how do we provide that mandated service that the codes require municipal governments to ensure that their residents have access to fire and emergency services. And so we have come to the discussion about the establishment of countywide public safety authorities. And I'm pleased to be partnering with Senator Carney on the bill that will be formally come before the committee in the near future. And we'd like to talk to you about what's included in the bill, and also to get your input on the areas where you may have questions or things that you believe are unclear or need to be amended before we finalize this effort. So that is my opening comment. I'll be happy to go through the bill summary high level, but Senator Carney, I think I'd like to just make sure you have an opportunity to offer your opening comments as well. So thanks, everybody. It's great to be with all of you.
Well, thank you, Senator Baker. And I very much appreciate your leadership in helping get this very important piece of legislation to move. I think in the time that we started working on it, we were trying to be as inclusive as possible and get input from as many stakeholders moving forward. And I think I'm safe to say we've talked to everybody on the Zoom call, I think, about how to move this forward and the pros and cons of, we always say the devil is in the details, right? So it's working that way through. Sam Arnold, my my policy director, has been really instrumental in moving this all forward, and he has nothing but high praise to talk about Nate Silcox in terms of all the work that he's done moving this forward. I would be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to Jerry Ozog as well. Jerry's been really very forthcoming and quite frank with us about as we try to move these things forward, as have Kevin Bissell and Mark Hamilton from CCAP, who have been really fabulous in terms of trying to work out the various pieces of this to a point where we can all make it work. We were always interested in trying to create a framework within which the individual authorities could make their own sort of decisions about what made sense for them. Because, you know, as I've heard since my first day in the Senate, one size doesn't fit all in Pennsylvania, and we try to keep that moving forward and great as well as we can. So, you know, the main point about it is just to create an economy of scale that allows these individual entities to still maintain their independence, but take some of the, you know, lift some of the burden off their shoulders in ways that we can help with both fire and EMS. So the last bit of thanks is for the State Fire Office of State Fire Commissioner and the Bureau of the EMS have been, again, really wonderful as we kind of move this forward. So thank you, Senator Baker. I think I'll turn it back to you for your bill description.
Sure. Thank you, everyone. And so we find ourselves beginning this process looking at the Municipal Authorities Act, which is the great framework for our legislation, which amends Title 53. And what we're doing is adding the definition of public safety projects to include fire protection services, EMS, and related services, including administrative support. It specifically excludes police services. And so under this new section that we are creating, public safety authorities, the goal here is to create a countywide authority for either fire services only, EMS only, or both fire and EMS. So it's important to recognize as well that this is optional, not mandatory. It is an optional. It would allow the counties to make an effort to include representation from the municipalities served by an authority. The municipalities would join by adopting an ordinance to contract with the specific authority. And the existing rules would apply to authorities. I'm not sure, someone is not muted.
I'm aware.
Wes Majors, can you please mute?
Wes Majors, thank you. It's great to hear your voice. The power of technology can be challenging, right? But we all have lived through that. Thank you, Wes. I think the important thing to recognize is that under the existing state rules that would apply with the power to set and collect rates, fees, and other charges, an area that's very important for me is the transparency component to it. And it would also fall under the requirements of sunshine, right to know, and audit. So I think that addresses an issue of the transparency component. So they have the power to set and collect the rates. The authority cannot assess rates, fees, or charges of any municipality that does not opt in. So it would not have that authority. If the county elects not to create an authority, there is criteria for municipalities representing a proportion of the county population to petition to create one. This may be an area that we look to answer questions or get your feedback on. We have staked out a 51% currently, but there may be those who would like to revisit that as part of this particular bill. The authority's operations can look different from one county to the other, to the point of Senator Carney saying that one size doesn't fit all. So what may apply in Wyoming County could be different in Pike County or Wayne, Luzerne, or Susquehanna. The authority could perform administrative and fiscal functions only and contract services. The authority may directly employ EMS providers, and the authority cannot directly employ firefighters. I know that's a question, and we have some of the professional firefighters on, and that pertains to Act 111 and collective bargaining. Under this DCED, the Office of State Fire Commissioner and the Bureau of EMS will have a role to develop guidelines for counties to create an authority. And we will likely need to invest some resources to provide important technical assistance to those entities wishing to pursue this. And that has to be a part of the conversation. And we've already had some preliminary discussions with the appropriations chairman and looking at what potentially that fiscal impact would be. This can also include contracting for educational and technical assistance. Efforts are being made to identify funding for the creation of the authority and to perform a study on how it could work best in each county. And so our goal is to create tools for success and to help try to address some of the challenges. And, first, many of my counties have brought this to my attention. In Pike County, they have been looking at this issue. Commissioner Matt Osterberg and I know Tim Knapp, our emergency services director there, have been part of this discussion as creating options for communities. And we know that there are small municipalities that could put an assessment on and it wouldn't derive enough revenue for them to even begin to operate with one full-time employee or to provide the level of service they need. So there's strength in numbers, and we believe by establishing this, that we create that opportunity for working in partnership, working in collaboration. One of the issues that I think we need to look at is the mandate in the codes affecting boroughs and township officials that require you to provide this level of service. Would that be satisfied by creating this authority? And we have to make clear, and I think that's something that Chris Ramsey has mentioned, we need to continue to make sure that that's clear, that if you're working to do this, that you're satisfying that requirement so that you're not being hit on both sides. And so that's something I think we need to look at as well. I know that there are a number of questions and issues that have been raised, and I'd just like to open that up for any additional thoughts or comments. But really, this is about dialogue and about getting the bill in a position that we can all have a comfort level. And if there are specific questions or areas that you believe are not clear, it's important for us to hear from you today and to know that. So just want to say thank you for everyone. Thank you to all of those on the call. And Nate, are you our facilitator, or Senator Carney? I don't know if I missed anything, if you'd like to add it, but the floor is open to dialogue and conversation.
Well, thank you, Senator Baker, and I'll facilitate here, but Senator Carney, do you have anything else you want to add on?
No, I thought Senator Baker, as always, did a wonderful job of explaining a very complex piece of legislation. But we have listened to the bill has changed in the last couple of years, as you know, Nate, and it's because of the input we've gotten from a lot of the people on this call. So we look forward to hearing people's comments and concerns.
Thank you, Senators. And I also want to point out Senator Muth has joined us as well. So welcome, Senator Muth. And if you'd like to care to say any statement here, feel free to.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak, but came here to listen to everyone. And thank you, Senator Baker, for a thorough intro and for including me. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator. With that, we had a couple of these formats here during the last session, and I'm going to go right around the Zoom here, so to speak, and we'll start off with the EMSN. Dylan Ferguson is on with us. Dylan, would you care to make any remarks?
Good afternoon, Nate. Good afternoon, everyone. In specific regards to this bill, nothing specific. We've certainly been a part of these conversations since its inception. Happy to continue being part of those conversations. Certainly, I personally, support anything that helps provide some financial support to our Commonwealth's fire and EMS agencies and organizations. Certainly needs to be a realization, which has already been stated here, that what works well in some areas might not work so well in others. But I think that this process has been one that has been open and has, resulted in some positive changes. And I think that will serve this process well. And looking forward to hearing additional conversation today. Thanks, Nate.
Thank you, Dylan. I'm going to turn it over to the Ambulance Association. We have Don DeRemus on the line, and possibly, I didn't see him yet, but Chuck Cressley might be with us as well. Heather Sherrar is with us too. Go ahead, Don.
Oh, and so, Nate, we also have Gary Waters with us as well.
Yeah, gotcha.
So while we support this concept and the structure as it's presented, this isn't going to be a cure-all for EMS financially in the Commonwealth, because this is going to be a piecemeal approach and won't solve the funding needs of EMS across the entire state. There's also the issue of somebody starting an authority, and if municipalities aren't part of that authority in a county, because of our statutory response requirement under the PA code, we have to respond if we're requested. So you might have somebody paying for an authority and those authority services, and that ambulance going out of that authority's jurisdiction to cover those calls. For the specific authority issues, I just deferred to Mr. Waters, who's the resident expert here, because he actually is an authority. So I turn it over to Gary.
Thanks, Don. I appreciate the opportunity to speak, Senator Baker and Senator Kearney. I am kind of the unofficial spokesman for the existing 8 ambulance authorities, most of which have been in existence for better than 40 years. So through our success, I can tell you that we support the concept because we've proven that it works. We are not necessarily sure that with some of the restrictive natures that Senator Baker has already alluded to with the 51%, that it'll reach the goal that I think that everybody's trying to accomplish. So I think that's a legitimate area that needs to be discussed. Simply the easiest fix would have been to add EMS and fire to the legislation under the powers and purposes, and provide a readiness fee structure under the fee sentence, and you could have moved forward very easily. But with that said, our concern is for the existing authorities. There's some language in there which we think that is conflicting. Obviously, one that Mr. DeRemus noted was the restriction that you shall not be able to respond outside the authority's area. We kind of think that is in direct violation of Title 35, the Interstate Mutual Aid Act, and also the PA code for the EMS rules and regulations. But we're also concerned about not being able to levy the charges that we already have. Most of our contracts with our municipalities are through resolutions, and they're not ordinances. So we would have to have the ability to have to go back and renegotiate all of those contracts to assure that we have ordinances in place for all of those. With that said, also, the one thing that would need to be an assurance is that when you create a municipal authority, they're only in existence for 50 years. So with the existing 8 authorities, like I said, most of them being greater than 40 years in existence, we would have to have an assurance that even if they were renewed, we would continue to be excluded. I will tell you from our personal experience, the biggest struggle that we've had is obviously an authority has to be self-sustaining and self-supporting. The biggest issue that we have is there is not a clear prescribed fee structure in there to pay for readiness. And we experienced this during COVID when all the calls went away. We bill for service, but there was nothing there that specifically says that we're allowed to bill an annual fee, if you so, to pay for the readiness portion. And
So
that's significant.
Gary, it's Lisa. If you don't mind, I'd just like to understand a little bit more. And to your point of the 8 highly successful authorities that are operating, there is nothing in my intent to in any way change that. And so if there needs to be a clarification for those who are structured or an acknowledgement of a different structure that has been done, perhaps we carve you out and list you in some other way. Nate, I'm speaking off the top of my head, but I certainly understand that. We don't want to in any way affect your current operations. To your point about cooperation and the mutual aid piece of that, how do the contracts currently work? Because I do have some municipalities who've raised, if I serve your community, you're going to have to pay or I'm not going to come. Is that permitted? And so if we're going to clarify that mutual aid component, is there language we should provide in this that ensures that, I certainly think all of us want to make sure that we want to be good neighbors, that we're going to respond appropriately, and not just be the haves and have-nots, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. I think part of the problem is with this language is you're trying to accomplish the day in and day out, how do we respond, how do we contract, and do we provide this service? But I think unintentional consequence of this language prohibits us, if there's a disaster situation or an airplane crash in a neighboring community, that we're not able to respond to that. So I think that language needs to be clarified and addressed.
I think if we could look to put some parameters around extenuating situations or permit that, I think that's absolutely appropriate. And it's certainly not our intent not to be good neighbors and not to have appropriate response. And so if we can all work together to clarify that, I think that's very appropriate. To your point and to Don's point, it's I understand that.
Yep. And quite frankly, sometimes there's just those unintended consequences that we just don't all think about at the time. And we need to make sure that language is clear. The EMS Act says is that the care or the EMS services should be provided uniformly and without restriction. And we just need to make sure that, and that was good intent, but we need to make sure that we are, but we also need to make sure that everybody's also essentially paying for the service to assure that it's there, because the bottom line is we need to be funded.
I understand that. And there is a frustration that I hear from some of my communities that provide service and are serving more residents outside of their municipalities than inside. And some of those communities are not stepping up and not doing that. And so we mandate they provide the service, but how do we enforce that? Or how do we ensure, and I don't want to say enforce, but I mean, it's the right thing to do. It should be done. And to the best of the community's ability, how do we ensure that they do that?
Absolutely agree. Give you an example. Last year, we responded to 67 calls outside of our community to serve to areas that don't support us. And you know, the problem is that then puts a strain on our local communities because they're funding the service. So there's got to be a fix somewhere here.
Well, I think that's an important consideration that we need to continue to look at. And I'm very sensitive to that because I am hearing that in many of my communities. So thank you, Gary.
Thank you. I appreciate the time.
I just put in real quick, I know that Sam and I were discussing this mutual aid because it happens all the time here in Delaware County as well. And I think he and Chris have been tossing around some various language around sort of how to make sure we don't step on any toes as we kind of move forward. I don't know, Sam or Chris, do you want to, can you talk about that? Not to put you on the spot, but.
No, I think that's right, Senator. We've heard some of these concerns and yeah, we've had a good conversation with Gary, and I think there's a way to get to this. We're not derailing the intents of the bill. We're just clarifying some things a little bit further, and we're close to it. If we have any other comments coming from this discussion, then if we have any other language to polish, we'll try to do it one more time before we get a number attached to the bill and make those changes. But I think we're close.
If I may, this is Commissioner Boozle, if I may speak here. Senator Baker, I think you're hitting on a point. I still volunteer as a fireman and an EMS provider, but one of the things that we're seeing is exactly what everyone's talking about, but not really coming up with a good faith way of doing this. We do not want to create the have and have nots. I agree 100%. The other issue is how I envision this is, and I have many municipalities that pay in and many municipalities that take advantage. And I hate to say it that way, but that is exactly what's happening. What I would like to see in this legislation would be a chargeback ability. There's a cost of readiness, and if that's the cost that they absorb, and those 760 some calls that Gary mentioned, some of those were paid. I'm sure some had insurance, some were transported, some weren't. But the cost that's not really regained is the cost of readiness. And so I think that if there would be some kind of a stipulation of 75% of the cost or something being billed back to that municipality that chose not to be a part of the authority, that would probably solve a lot of the angst. And there has to be some way, some mechanism, some fair mechanism to do that.
I appreciate that that comment, and I think we can go back and work with Nate and Sam and Chris and take a look at that. But you know, I do hear that, and that's a significant burden on some communities when others aren't shouldering the same burden. So I think that's I'm very sensitive to that as well.
Let me go back to Gary. Gary, you finished with your statement at this point?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay, great. And then we'll recognize the rest of here at the Ambulance Association. I don't know whether Chuck has joined us yet, but Heather is with us. Heather, anything you want to add from your angle?
No, thank you. We look forward to continue working with you.
Okay, Chuck Cressley, did you get on or not? Okay, with that, David Jones from the Emergency Health Services Council is on with us. David, go ahead.
Thank you, Nate. Thanks for the opportunity to be here today. Most of our points have already been addressed by the Ambulance Association. Both Dawn and Gary raised some valid points, and we did get some reassurance this morning from Senator Baker's office that those issues were going to be addressed. I also heard for the first time today that Senator Baker mentioned that this allows us to hire EMS personnel. I guess I didn't see anything in the proposed legislation about that, but I guess if it's not prohibited, it's allowed. So that's going to be an interesting situation if an authority starts up an area where people already have those positions, but it's something to look at. I guess two concerns.
Dave, Sam Arnold had his hand up. Sam, did you want to comment?
Yeah, I just want to clarify, the Municipal Authorities Act does give an authority the ability to hire and fire employees. This legislation clarifies, though, You can't have an authority providing services in an area that already has existing providers in that area. You can start a public safety authority to provide for support services for those providers. But what the legislation would prohibit is someone coming in and trying to squeeze, push out people who are already there. We want it to be supported, and the legislation specifies that in the limitation section.
Okay, I did not get that interpretation out of the language that's there, but I'll reread it and make sure I understand that section. Couple other things here that we talked about was I have a concern that as these authorities get started and operational, that additional positions are going to be established by these authorities, such as an executive director or financial oversight officer, that could take money away from the operation of the authority or actual boots on the ground type provision of services. So I would be very, very careful that we're not just creating another layer of bureaucracy here without solving our problem, which is, as everyone has said so far in the call, is we are not reimbursing these services for the cost of readiness, and taking additional funds away from that is going to hurt the overall effort. The other situation, we were talking here about the Fire Commissioner's Office and the Bureau of EMS. PHSC is more than willing to support the Bureau of EMS in developing the guidelines for these authorities, and I'm sure that PFESI is willing to assist the Fire Commissioner's Office as well with those. So please reach back out to us at that point. We'll be glad to offer assistance. That's all I have today, unless you have any questions for me.
Thanks, David.
No.
Have any questions?
No, I just like to say, Dave, if as we're looking at the development of the guidelines, if you would like specifically to include other entities, now's the time to let us know that. If you don't feel that this is sufficient enough, please share your recommendations to us.
Yeah, I think you need to have participation from the field providers at this to help develop that, because they know the business better than anyone does.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Going to next recognize Greg Hellier, who's with the American College of Emergency Physicians. Go ahead, Greg.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right, well, very good. Thank you for the opportunity to participate. Today, I am wearing my Pennsylvania ACEP hat, ACEP being American College of Emergency Physicians. Pennsylvania ACEP firstly wants to state that we support our EMS colleagues in this time of crisis, which is threatening delivery of EMS services throughout the Commonwealth. Secondly, we would like to thank the elected officials for their efforts to address this, beginning with the county commissioners and extending now into the state Senate. We appreciate the effort. We appreciate the ability to be involved. And I'd like to continue to monitor this and be involved and as this progresses.
Thank you, Greg. Let's turn over to the fire side. Wes, are you still on the line there? And I don't think the fire commissioner is, but Wes Majors, if you'd like to make any statement from your end, I'd be happy to hear it now.
Yeah, hello, Nate, and my apologies for earlier. I had my son is running around here, so I'm trying to keep him under control as well. But no, the fire commissioner provided, I think he sent you over a brief statement. I know he's taken another look at this. I think as of right now, we're neutral, but similar to some of the concerns that have already been raised, we've heard a lot about the legislation and trying to ensure that the intergovernmental agreements that are already in place aren't hurt by this. And he just wants to ensure that communities still have the ability to bargain, and a lot of the issues still are around the financing and ensuring that people can get their costs recovered. So I'll listen in, taking notes, and I'll take them back to the commissioner so we can follow back up after the meeting.
Thank you, Wes. I don't recollect seeing a statement from the.
Okay, I'll send it over to you, Nate, because he provided it to me. I thought he forwarded it to you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay.
Okay, next up, let's recognize, let me skip down here to Jerry Ozog. He's going to have to jump off at 2 o'clock himself. So let me see if Jerry's available on the line, and go ahead, Jerry.
Nate, can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Jerry Ozog from the Pennsylvania Fire and Emergency Services Institute. We have again participated in the roundtable for the last year and a half. And again, we'd like to thank Senator Baker, Senator Kearney, Senator Muth is on there, and again, with when Senator Killian was involved. We support the concept of anything that is able to improve and sustain fire and emergency services in Pennsylvania. We participated in the hearing in Pike County and have been intimately involved in traveling the state, learning about the challenges facing our organizations. And we appreciate everyone's work in this and continue to support the changes that will ensure that the cost of readiness for EMS is met, and that we are able to look at the big picture, what's best for the communities and what's best for the patients and citizens that need fire and EMS. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jerry. That was short and sweet. And let me back up now here to Jay Delaney. Jay, go ahead.
Unmuted there. Thank you, Senator Baker and others, for allowing the Pennsylvania Career Fire Chiefs Association to address Senate Bill 1274. Our organization supports the concept because it was one of the recommendations from the Senate Resolution 6 committee to actually simplify the process for regionalization or countywide authorities. From April 2017 to November of 2018, when I sat on the committee with 39 others from across the state, we recognized that we're in crisis mode with our emergency service response across the Commonwealth. We realized we lost hundreds of EMS services over the last decade and the continued loss of firefighters. So our opinion was this is just another tool in the toolbox to allow the state and the Commonwealth municipal providers to continue to provide quality emergency services. So I won't go into much more than that. We're supportive of the concept, and we understand if we do nothing, where will we be in a few years from now? So it'll be our testimony. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Next up, I'm going to recognize JT Pennington, President of the Professional Firefighters Association. Go ahead, JT.
Thanks, Nate. I'd like to thank Senator Baker, Senator Kearney, and Senator Muth, and yourself, Nate, for allowing me to participate today. My name is JT Pennington. I represent 6,000 career firefighters and medics across Pennsylvania. The PPFFA supports increasing fire and EMS protection for the Commonwealth's residents. When a person picks up a phone and calls 911, that person and their family deserve to have the best quality service and protection provided. As we all know, Senate Resolution 6 recommendation 6 states that municipalities, counties should be empowered to form emergency service districts and to allow regionalization of countywide fire and EMS services. As we know, fire and EMS services agencies are failing across Pennsylvania, and we must look to the future if we're going to provide the best services possible. We are not opposed to this bill. We're just asking to be cautious and careful that this bill does not create any loopholes that could be used to exploit current employees, current firefighters, and fire-based EMS, and deny them of their rights to be protected. This also could open up Pandora's box. Systems already exist in Pennsylvania for this, such as the Intergovernment Cooperation Act and regionalization. The question I have is, this is already going on around the state. And I'm from Butler County, and in Western PA, we have McCandless Franklin Park Ambulance Authority. We have Valley Ambulance Authority. So these authorities already exist across Pennsylvania. And then we also have there in Harrisburg, across the river, the West Shore Regional Police Department. So my question is the systems already are here in place in Pennsylvania. By opening this up and adding this to the Authorities Act, we're just opening up Pandora's box when systems already exist. And I'm just asking that we take this slow and we be cautious and make sure that we're not hurting anybody, either the residents or the firefighters and medics across the state. Thank you.
Thank you, JT. I'm going to next go to Tim Leech with the Pittsburgh Firefighters. Go ahead, Tim.
Hey, everybody. Thank you, Nate. Appreciate you giving me the opportunity to be a part of this discussion today. Senator Kearney, Senator Baker, thank you for your work. I'm not going to repeat what a few people have already said. I just appreciate being a part of the process. I'm trying to take this slow and be careful. As Senator Baker brought up already, and we had some discussions with Senator Kearney's office and Senator Killian's office last session on 1274, and some language was added into the bill to prohibit, the authorities employing firefighters. So we're just very concerned about the negative or unintended consequences that could come out of this because of the firefighters' workers' comp benefits and collective bargaining rights are very specific, that they only apply to firefighters that are employed by a municipality. So we just want to be careful and be a part of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. We'll go next to Tom Santana, who's with the Pennsylvania Firemen's Association.
Thanks. Thank you for putting this together. This is really helpful. This issue is one of Firemen's Association State of Pennsylvania's legislative initiatives for this session. Certainly, we feel it's important. I just had one question. I didn't hear anybody else mention it. On the 51%, and certainly we're looking for something to be as flexible as possible. Can you explain a little bit more about the 51% and how that came about? And is that something that is going to remain in the final draft of the bill?
Senator Baker?
Sure, thank you. When we began having these conversations with my commissioners in Pike County and CCAP and Chris and I, the belief was that a majority should have an interest in a county. And so we arrived at a number, but that is obviously something that I think we can continue to have that discussion and dialogue on. I wouldn't say that that's written on the tablet in stone, and would certainly welcome input from others. If you're going to create this option, what should it include? Should it include a majority? And depending upon the size of a particular community, would that tip it one way or another? So I'm that discussion as well. So I think it's something we're looking for your feedback on as we move forward.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
And to repeat that, I mean, we've had the conversations on a number of these roundtables regarding the specific issue. Is it 51% of population? Is it 51% of the municipalities in the county? So we'll have an ongoing dialogue on that front. Next up, Tim or Tom, are you finished on your end?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, we'll go to the local government part of the equation. Chris Gazy here with the Local Government Commission. You've been very helpful with us in terms of sketching out a number of the provisions here, and turn it over to you.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for everyone who's participating today. I'd just like to say, we are primarily involved in this process to be a resource, answer any questions that we can about how things might work and jive with local government law, and as well as provide any assistance in putting this together. It's been a pleasure working particularly closely with Sam and Chris thus far, and I'm happy to continue that. We won't be taking a position on the legislation, as it's not something that's a commission work product, but just happy to see the process move forward.
Thank you, Chris. Now we'll turn it over to the County Commissioners Association, which has taken the lead here on this issue since the SR6 Commission. So we have Kevin Boozle, Mark Hamilton, Lisa Schaefer, and Ashley White on the line. Kevin, do you want to start us off, or is there somebody else that wants to take the lead?
I'd be happy to kick it off. I think that we all kind of had our day in front of this and looked at this quite a bit. I think one of the things that hasn't been mentioned yet, the number one goal for counties getting involved is not to take over, not to fund it. I think that was part of the issue. The authority is necessary, but not as a county control. So the authority would be authorized but not funded by. And so that's been addressed in this, and I appreciate that. And I do want to thank both Senator Baker and Kearney for taking this issue on. And it's been much needed for many years, from SR6, SR60, Pike County report. There's a lot of data here that says we definitely need to do something. We could have copied SR6 report and turned it to SR60 and vice versa, and we came out almost the same way. So without action, we will be here again in 5 years. So I appreciate your guidance. The concern that I have that jumped out, and Lisa and I were talking about this, is where on the section F, where it talks about DCD and they shall develop guidelines for counties. When we're talking about the necessity of flexibility, every county is different. That kind of pulls that away from that flexibility point that we would be looking for. As a authority, we establish authorities under certain predetermined guidelines, not determine guidelines as we go. So that's a concern of ours. If we're looking at best practices, where we have a seat at the table and we can have that conversation, that's different. But when you say they shall and give us guidelines, that's I already know where that goes. And I got to be honest with you, when you look at something at a state level, that is not uniqueness by county. And so that's probably my largest concern in this statement.
Commissioner,
Lisa, yes.
I just want to jump in real quick. I know that came up earlier about who should be part of establishing that. And, is it appropriate for us to think about some sort of oversight review task force, whatever we may call it, that gets to the point of others, that it's inclusive rather than exclusive? And so I know your county may be different than some of mine, and I'm sure the Commissioners Association, Lisa, will speak about that. So if a tightening of that, whether it's a shall or they may develop utilizing best practices, whatever we can do to, ensure that we're capturing the uniqueness of the state and giving as much flexibility. The intent certainly isn't to pigeonhole any one entity that's trying to be created.
Thank you for that. And I think that just having it at top of mind, so we don't lose track of that, what our mission was in bringing this forward. Lisa, do you have anything else to add to that? I don't want to miss the concept that we had.
No, I think the only thing is just it just depends on what we mean by the term guidelines and how prescriptive we intend that to be, because we have advocated for some role in providing, again, that technical assistance, education to help counties that might need some help in getting the ball rolling, getting the authority set up. So if that's kind of the intent here, is to provide some information that can be helpful to counties, that's great. We just don't want guidelines to be interpreted as being, here's the formula you must follow in your county. So I think that as long as we clarify that, I think we'll be in good shape.
Thank you. I appreciate where you guys are coming from on that. We've had some discussions here from where this legislation started off last session in terms of providing some guidelines. Our roadmap to get there is really what we're envisioning with that aspect, I believe.
And if I may, Nate, on that, I think one of the goals by listing DCED, which has a representation of the local governments here in the state, and then the Bureau of EMS, and then the fire commissioner, we wanted to have it clear in the legislation that the state has a skin in this game, and they wanted to have their expertise added. And again, it's not to be exclusive of anybody else, but those would be primary drivers from the state side of it, of who should have a role in formulating the like Lisa said, best practices, helpful framework for counties to then go and create this how they best see fit in their area.
Just another point of concern would be, I've worked with DCD in the past, and we worked on merging fire companies. And from that point of view, there was always some backup dollars behind that. While I look at springboard money or kickoff money, or however you want to say it, I think that needs to be discussed in this. And I don't have an issue with counties putting in match dollars if this is where they want to go. That's not the issue. I think that as someone just said, I think Chris just said, look, the state does have skin in this game. You're going to get something out of this as well. You're going to have a single point of contact, perhaps for an entire county on grant systems and so on. There's an efficiency in mass grant writing. So I think that's one of the things that I would be looking for, especially kicking off an authority model. You are right. We are going to need a financial. We are going to need an executive. We're going to need those pieces. May need brick and mortar. I'm not sure exactly how that will play out. However, there is a cost associated to starting this. While it hasn't been discussed in this language that I've seen anywhere, I think it's something that we should be considering. And again, skin in the game would be municipalities buying in, counties buying in, state buying in. Everyone has something to gain. So I don't know how that plays out or flushes out, but I think that needs to be part of the conversation. And then I'll turn it over to Mark.
Oh, thank you, Kevin. You and Lisa have done a good job with our comments, I think, for the most part. I did have a question on the fire protection employees side, but I think most of those have been answered. I certainly understand why that's been introduced into the legislation. My one other question regarding that, though, is if there was how does that affect maybe down the road where there's an authority that is a joint authority with fire and EMS, and you have someone that is an EMT but also a firefighter, and that's probably not going to be answered today, but how does that affect that type of a situation going forward? And I wanted to say thank you to the senators that are involved here with very much gratitude. I've been involved with this. I was on the SR6 Commission, and it's very gratifying to see that all the work that we have put in across the board, all of the SR6 Commission people, that these issues are moving forward. And we seemingly are getting somewhere to start solving both the fire and the EMS issues in response. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Hamilton. Does anybody want to take a stab at the question here that Commissioner Hamilton posed? No.
You do raise a consideration for a dually employed individual, and I don't know that we specifically have addressed that in the language. So it's something we'll have to take back, I believe, and look at, unless Senator Carney, if you have any thoughts on that. But I don't know how many dually employed there are, but I would imagine that that does exist, and it's probably something that we should clarify up front.
Thank you, Senator. And I would agree with that. I mean, I think we see it very often in the volunteer service. We see an awful lot of EMTs who also are volunteer firemen. So, I know that we're aware of it. I know that we're still digging into the details of it, but we can address that more specifically, Mark. I appreciate the observation.
Chris Gazy, do you have any thoughts, comments right off the top of your head on that?
Well, I was going to say, this is actually something that we've talked a little bit about and done some consideration on the language of from a technical perspective. And our impression is that we're not talking about, it's about the employment as a firefighter. And if there's a better way to phrase the language, we could do so. But in order to read the current language as prohibiting somebody from being employed as an EMS personnel who is also a firefighter in another capacity would require an interpretation of the law as though a firefighter is in some way an identity versus the point of employment with the authority. And I think that's the distinction. I'm not saying that the language couldn't be improved, but I don't think that there's a particularly high risk with the drafting now. I think we're looking at, let's see, subsection H on page 3 in line 27. What's that in? That's in the section 5606.1. And that's the language at question. So I mean, I don't have a dog in the fight to say like, no, we don't think that there's a better way to write it, but the language as written now is intended not to create a barrier for somebody who does have a employment relationship as a firefighter in a different capacity.
Thanks, Chris. Gary Waters, you were raising your hand.
Yeah, so that brings a valid point. I know there's at least one the existing EMS authority in the Pittsburgh area who also provides rescue services. So those personnel would be certified through, for lack of a better term, for the professional firefighter side and their certification process. They would hold those and perform rescue operations, which typically are kind of a blur between firefighting and EMS. So that would definitely need to be clarified.
Yeah, I'll also just add that the authorities would have the flexibility, to contract with municipalities if they have firefighters who are also playing this dual role, specified it's the municipality who is the employer and that the authorities only providing support to that agency. Therefore, to ensure the Workers' Comp and Act 111 collective bargaining rights are being protected, and now providing an authority mechanism to help that municipality meet those obligations.
Sam, it's JT Pennington. I also agree with you. And then one other thing, also the way it's written, and those protections are provided to employees of a political subdivision. Authority is not in there, and authority is in a political subdivision. One thing we also have to keep in mind, this possibly could change how Act 205 money is distributed to communities. With the if they are employees of that, municipalities are going to lose money towards their if they're employees or they put employees with authorities, then it affects how much money they get and how the Act 205 money is distributed to them. So that's a concern, and which needs more research done also.
Okay, go ahead.
Thanks for allowing me to weigh in here. Yeah, I want to parlay onto what JT said and others here. There is a lot of fire-based EMS across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and some of them have dual role firefighters who are paramedics and EMTs. Others are civilian EMS members of a fire department, and there's a lot of them across the Commonwealth. So I think that the discussion has to be furthered, at least on this mechanism or this part of the discussion.
This is Dylan. I just want to chime in rather quickly. I certainly agree with Chief Delaney that there's a measurable portion of the current EMS community that is fire-based. But I think the one thing that we're all getting tripped up on is that these are organizations that currently exist. We've already established previously, based on the conversation during Dave Jones's remarks, that the authority would not be establishing new lines of service on the fire side at all, because it's explicitly prohibited, and would not have any impact on the operations of existing organizations, because they would not be able to supplant existing companies and existing organizations. So I think to an extent we're getting tripped up here on something that might actually be addressed by a different section, because these companies and these organizations exist, they're not going to be able to be supplanted by an authority from an operational perspective. So that would be one thing that I would just highlight here. And just reading that subsection A, from a plain text reading of trying to address the dual role. It does not address the rescue component, which that's a fair point. Is that if the authority by statute is explicitly prohibited from hiring firefighters, then the logical deductive reasoning would be that if someone is a joint firefighter EMT, that there would be no way that they could be filling both capacities within the authority, because employment as a firefighter is explicitly prohibited. So it would only they would only be able to be considered an EMS provider as employed by the authority. I'm not saying that it shouldn't change or that there shouldn't be additional discussion. I just say that from a plain text reading and just kind of deducing that from the various sections, it seems pertinent both to your point, Chief Delaney, and to some other points that have been made recently.
Thank you, Dylan. Anybody else on this front? If not, we'll keep moving and we'll go to the State Association of, I'm sorry, is Tim Knapp on the line? I don't believe he was able to get on.
I'm on the line.
Go ahead, Tim.
Thanks, Nate. I just want to thank Senator Baker, Senator Carney, and Senator Muth, and everyone else who's been part of this process so far. It's been a pleasure to be a part of this process. I believe everyone's asked my questions already that I've had. The struggles are still here today, and it's great to see so many people working together on a solution. I'm always available to reach out to if you ever needed to see the Pike report or anything of that nature. And I just like to see things moving forward with a lot of flexibility. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Now we'll go to the boroughs with Ed Troxel.
Let's see. Thank you, Nate. Thank you, Senator Baker, and thank you, Senator Carney. We are extremely pleased to see how this is working out for everyone. I'm sure there's a lot of technical details we still have to deal with. From our municipal points of view, at least I can speak for the boroughs, is that we do embrace the concept. We like the idea. It brings a regional approach, working in scale. We like that. Also, the population aspect with 51%, maybe we'll work some on that, not sure. But just briefly, we support the concept as we look forward. We all know the devil's going to be in the details, as was said earlier. And I'm just really appreciating a lot of the comments, observations from the technical providers out there, because that's important for us to understand. Getting that back to our membership won't be difficult, and we look forward to working with everybody on this. So thanks so much for the time.
Thank you, Ed. Now I'm going to turn it over to Joe Gerdes with the Township Supervisors Association.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to echo the thanks Senator Baker and Senator Carney and Senator Muth for pulling us all together and for the opportunity to say a few words. Also, want to thank Sam and Chris and Nate for the ongoing dialogue over a couple of years here that I've been involved on working on this and looking at some of the things that have changed for the better of this important issue. We're very appreciative of the opt-in provision for municipalities and the representation and the transparency that Senator Baker mentioned. I guess one of the big points is the 51% and really looking for more flexibility in the multi-municipal option to allow communities to form these authorities. But we definitely look forward to working with you moving forward. It is obviously an important issue. I appreciate Senator Baker bringing up looking at whether or not participation would satisfy the requirement in the codes to provide these important services. So thank you. Look forward to continuing to help everyone on this call to help fix this problem. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Next, we'll go to the Pennsylvania Municipal Authorities Association. Jenny Shade, Director of Government Relations, and Jenny Case with Government Relations as well.
Thank you, Nate. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So thank you to Senators Baker, Senator Carney, and Senator Muth for investing your time in this initiative. And also thank you to everyone else that's here today. I think most of you have already heard this, but for those of you that are new to this roundtable, the Authorities Association very much supports this concept. Our act was created and municipal authorities exist to assist local governments provide essential services. So this is right up our alley, and we're happy to be of service. As far as any concerns that we have, I think that they remain the same as before. When we've discussed this in some of our other roundtables, and that would be, just want to make sure things are not too restrictive. So, we do have within our act the term joint authorities, and that would be 2 or more municipalities. So we very much support that concept. We also echo what Gary said earlier, just about placing, the projects under our project list and keep it clean and simple, just like that. But we have heard many of the concerns of the haves and have-nots, and so we very much would like to be willing to work with you on that. And then also that maybe the 51% is a little too restrictive as well, which we've heard that before. So I think that's it on my end, unless Jennifer has anything else to add.
Thank you, Jenny. Yes. Thank you, Senators. Thank you, Nate, Chris, and Sam. Yes, we were very pleased to be part of this process and for the last 2 years. And I think that there's been a lot of good discussion, a lot of good ideas. The only thing I have to add is that perhaps if there's any change to the guidelines and, it's DCED and the counties being involved, I mean, we certainly would be welcome if that we could be included in that, just simply from the structure of an authority and assisting with the structure and setting up an authority. I think our association would be more than happy to do that, and we feel that we would have a lot of knowledge there. So that's one thing. If a task force is developed or anything like that, we'd enjoy being part of that. And yes, I mean, this I think is a great approach because authorities do have the ability to be regional, to serve beyond political boundaries. So it's a great vehicle to be able to address this issue. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jennifer. The Pennsylvania Municipal League and Township Commissioners Association could not be, Amy Sturgis could not be on the line, but she did want to note that PML and PSATC are generally in support of this measure. So appreciate that feedback as well. So with that, appreciate everybody being on. Senator Baker, Senator Carney, do you care to make any closing remarks?
I'd just like to say thank you for all the valuable input, insights, and let us go back, take a look at the various recommendations and work together with Senator Carney and his staff and Senator Muth and Senator Stefano and Nate to come up with some language perhaps that can address these outstanding issues. But I do agree, having chaired this committee for 7.5 years of my service, this is a longstanding challenge and problem, and having Pike County be involved just really shows the challenges we faced. And I want to thank Tim Knapp for being involved, and on the call, Chief Delaney, who has always been a friend, and although I don't represent Wilkes-Barre, he's certainly had his ear to the ground and done a great job with that. So thank you to Chris Ramsey and my staff again, and to all of you. Let's try to get it right. Let's work through the time and the process needed, and hopefully we can have a bipartisan bill with good support from all of the organizations affected. So thank you for your involvement.
Thank you, Senator Carney.
Yes, thank you, Senator Baker. And I too look forward to working with you to iron out what I hope are the last of the sort of details as we get through this whole process. It really has been, from my personal point of view, it's been kind of wonderful to work on legislation where we've, from the very beginning, tried to seek out as many stakeholders as possible to get them involved and to get their input moving forward. And I think the the bill is it's a much better bill now than it was 2 years ago when we first started talking about it. So I think we should continue this, and thank you to everybody who took the time today and to be here and to again let us hear your voice moving forward. I look forward to continuing to work with Nate and Chris and Sam and with Senator Baker to get this actually introduced and sponsored, et cetera, and actually become law. That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Looks like we just a little bit over 1 hour, but thank you very much for the time this afternoon, particularly on short notice here from starting this conversation off on Monday to have this meeting. Senator Muth has already dropped off the line. Otherwise, I'd recognize her as well. But thank you, everybody. We'll continue to be in touch here. Okay. Have a great day.